Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. I'm finally doing another monthly recap. I read 8 books in the month of December. So I read 4 fantasies, 1 science fiction, 1 literary fiction, and 2 romances. And I had 3 5-star reads. But I also reread 2 books in December, so that is going to count for some of the 5-star reads. But anyways, let's just go ahead and get started. So the first book that I read in December is 40 Words for Love by Aisha Saeed. This book is a young adult book. I found it in my town's only independent bookstore, and it is a magical realism slash fantasy romance. I couldn't even begin to explain this book to you because the world building was so bad that I don't even know if I understand what's going on, and I literally read this book in its entirety a month ago. But you have this girl and she's graduating high school, and you have this boy who's graduating high school as well. And this boy is a part of this like magical group of people that is discriminated against in the town that they live in, and he's not supposed to marry this normal human girl or like date her, but he wants to date her. He's fallen in love with her, and you essentially have to follow them as they go about trying to understand this forbidden romance and how it's gonna work. I really didn't like this book. I don't understand the magic system. I don't understand the world. I don't even understand what the conflict of the book was. And I rated this book 2.5 stars. The positive is that I couldn't put the book down, but other than that, there was nothing really good happening in this book. On a much better note, the next book that I read is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a literary fiction that took the book world by storm towards the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And the hype is well deserved. So essentially it's about a girl and a boy, and they meet in a hospital as children, and they build this friendship, and then they reconnect later in life and decide to build a video game together, which sounds really simple and it sounds like something I would never enjoy reading, but I actually did really enjoy it. I gave this book 5 stars. It is written beautifully, and it addresses pretty much every human issue that you can think of. It addresses grief, it addresses romance, it addresses so many different aspects of the human life and the human experience. And like I said, I really enjoyed it. I rated it 5 stars, but not for the same reason that I rate most books 5 stars. This book I rated 5 stars based on more of the quality of the story, the quality of the characters, of the plot, of the writing, than I did the feeling that this book gave me. Now, I did emotionally connect to the characters, just not as much as I usually do during something like a romance or a fantasy 5-star. This book definitely made me cry, it made me laugh, and I would highly recommend it. And don't knock it until you read it. The next book that I read is another book that I struggled to understand, and that is The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. The Ministry of Time takes place in Britain, and the British government has figured out how to accomplish time travel. But to make sure that they do it safely, they take people from the past who are about to die in their own timeline, and they bring them into the present. And this woman, she is an immigrant, but she is about to take on this soldier from the 1800s who is going to live with her and incorporate into the 21st century while he's living with her. Basically, as a science experiment, it has a lot of ethical questions, but again, it's a book. So it was really fun to read. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I would say there's a heavy subplot of romance, but it's not a romance. So don't go in expecting like a rom-com. But in my opinion, the romance subplot is very heavy. And a lot of the science talk of this book went completely over my head. There's a lot of the plot about war and intricacies of time travel, how time travel is dealt with by this particular author. And it all just kind of went over my head, and it left me very confused. But the feelings that I got reading this book almost made it a 5-star, which is why I gave it 4.5 stars. I would love to reread it physically versus listening to the audiobook, and I think that would help me understand it a lot better. The next book that I read in December is the second book in the Throne of Glass series, and that is Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. Now, there's not a lot that I can say about this book, obviously, since it's the second book in a series, But let me just say, I love Celaena Sardothien and I love what she stands for. She was insufferable in the beginning of the series, but not to a point that it made me dislike her as a character or want to read the books less. Plot of Throne of Glass is amazing, and I actually like it a lot better than the ACOTAR series. So I'm one of the very few people that really didn't like ACOTAR, which if you were here this time last year, you know that very well. But the Throne of Glass focuses a lot more on plot. It's a lot higher stakes than ACOTAR is, and there's a lot less romance, and it's no spice so far that I know of. I really, really love the series so far. I rated Crown of Midnight 4.5 stars. I absolutely loved it. At the time of me filming this video, I've also read Heir of Fire, and I'm reading Queen of Shadows, so clearly the series is a big success for me. The next book that I read / listened to is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, which I did read last year. Originally I rated it a 4 stars, but upon the reread I rated it 5 stars. I think about the series too much for it to not be a 5-star read. Stephanie Garber, her world building is absolutely phenomenal. Her worlds feel like fairy tales and they're so magical, and her writing is so lyrical. I just love it so much. I would pay so much money to be able to read these books again for the first time. And I'm really looking forward to rereading The Ballad of Never After. Now, I read You with a View by Jessica Joyce in August. I actually rated that book 3 stars. I did not think that the author was for me. She writes a lot of spice. She is very crude in some of her language, and her characters just felt like they were only physically attracted to each other. However, at that point in time, I had already bought The X-Files by Jessica Joyce and added it to my physical TBR. And I actually ended up reading it this month since I read so many fantasies. I needed some kind of brain break, breather from all of that. And that was this book. Now, this book actually surprised me. I only rated it 3.5 stars, which obviously is not a bad rating, but it also doesn't sound like it's that much of an upgrade from You with a View. However, this book is a second chance romance. You are following Eli and Georgia, and they are the best man and best woman, which I didn't know best woman was a thing until I read this book, but they are the best man and best woman of their best friend Adam's wedding. And literally everything that you can imagine going wrong for a wedding is going wrong. So it's up to them to fix it, and they dated years ago, and their relationship just hasn't been the same since. They used to be an inseparable trio, and now it's just kind of awkward, but they've vowed to make this weekend not awkward so that their best friend can have the best wedding experience ever. It's forced proximity, it's second chance romance, and it is so chaotic and laughable that it's enjoyable. Like I said, Jessica Joyce, it does write a lot of spice. So that's a huge reason that the rating is a 3.5 on this book. And I also think, even though I read this book for it to be a brain break, it felt a little bit too much like a brain break, considering, again, that I read 4 fantasies as much this month. It just wasn't quick enough to keep my mind occupied, but I still really enjoyed it. Now, I picked up Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros to reread. I am completely in love with this book. And if you don't know, Onyx Storm is the 3rd book in the series, and it's releasing in like 2 weeks. And I am so excited. I want to reread Iron Flame before I get to read Onyx Storm, so I'm forcing myself to wait to read it, which is kind of sad, but I'm still super excited. And rereading Fourth Wing was amazing. School, they ride on dragons. The stakes are incredibly high. Literally, you could die at any moment, and Rebecca Yarros is very good at killing off characters. And reading the death scene of one particular character a second time still made me completely sob, even though I was listening to the audiobook on 2x speed, and I knew it was going to happen because I was rereading the book. But Violet Sorrengail is actually not my favorite character. I don't really like her that much, and I discovered that upon rereading this book. But it's not her that makes this series and this book a 5-star. It is the world that they live in, it is the plot, it is the way that the characters behave around each other, it is the friendships, the stakes, it's everything. And I don't know what Rebecca Yarros put into this book, but whatever she put into this book, she took the entire world by storm, and I think I liked it even better reading it a second time. Now, the last book that I read in December is Namesake by Adrienne Young. This is the 2nd book in the World of the Narrows. I consider it a duology. It technically has a prequel and another character's story in another book at the end of the series, The first book, I don't think I was in the mindset to read it because the first book really confused me. This series is about sailors and the trade network on this specific ocean, and it's very high stakes. I consider it fantasy. I don't think it's actually considered fantasy, but actually no, I think it is. I'm right. It is considered fantasy because there is magic in here. But essentially you're following Fable. Fable is a sailor, and she is the daughter of the most important tradesman in the Narrows, which is the area of the sea that our characters are sailing. And like I said, this is the second book in the series, so I can't talk too much about it, but I did really like it a lot better than the first one. I think I was in a much better headspace to read it. I was a lot less confused. I was able to follow the story a lot better. I think the stakes were a lot higher in this book, and the romance was still barely there, but I did really love it a lot better the second time. And I think Adrienne Young just writes amazing books. I have Spells for Forgetting on my physical TBR right now, which I'm so super excited to read, but I rated this book 4 stars, and if you haven't read the series yet and you like young adult fantasy, I think you would really like this series. Alright, well I feel like that went really fast. I love you guys so much, and I will see you next week. And thank you for watching, and yeah, I hope I will be back very soon. Goodbye.